Okay, so recording started. This is not letting me get into my web slides for some reasons. Apologies, folks. I'll be with you. I'm just going to pop out of the share again and give this another go. May have to do this another way. Apologies for the tech issues. Let me just have another go at this. Okay. It's not allowing me to actually see your chat. So hopefully, Emma, if you've actually arrived, if you could let any latecomers in, and also, as I say, just feedback any chat messages to me. As I say, apologies for the actual issues with tech tonight, but I think we should crack on. Okay, hopefully you can all see this. I did see a message there. I'm just going to quickly go back. Hold on 1 second. Okay, someone's saying that they're having problems with the chat. Let me just, also not with the chat, with the actual viewing. Let me just double check that before we go in. I think it's important to get this right so everyone can see. Okay, let's do that now. Okay, so third time lucky. Okay, so here we go. So as I say, for those of you that have just arrived, I'm John Ferry. I'm Senior Careers Advisor within the London PSU, and I'll be presenting a variety of options to you in terms of F3 tonight. We are recording it, so if you did come in late, you haven't missed anything. We've just had a few tech issues, but hopefully we're on our way now. But there will be copies of the slides that I'll be presenting, and they'll be sent through to you within the next week or so. And I will be available at the end for any specific questions. Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to quickly mention Professional Support Unit. Hopefully everyone here has heard of us and has some idea of what we offer, but what we've got there is just a variety of the actual services that we offer within the PSU. So as you can see, you can have one-to-one career support. You can also have coaching support with us through the PSU. I'm not going to go into too much detail about us now, but this support is available to you right throughout your clinical training career, right through CCT, and indeed just beyond for 3 months as well. To get more information, you've got the link there, so you can look at the services in a bit more detail. Okay, just wanted to flag this up. As I say, I've alluded to this already in terms of the Foundation Doctors website. I just wanted to pick up actually in terms of some of the previous webinars that we've run. I mentioned the preparation for specialty applications and interviews webinar, which you can find, but also there's some other specific ones that are related to self-awareness, career exploration, arriving at a decision, and next steps as well within our specific SCAN career planning model, which I wanted to sort of highlight to you. So take a look at that, use the link. I think it's important, even, outside preparing for specialty, I think this will be useful for you just in sort of understanding and deciding on your F3 options as well. Okay, so moving on, as mentioned, for those of you who maybe come in a bit late, what we're actually going to be covering today is these particular areas in detail. So if there is other specific areas that you wanted information on, do please, as I say, drop some messages in the chat, or indeed you can register for a one-to-one, but I will, as I say, be available at the end for any particular questions. So we're looking at locum, we're looking at fellowships and staff grade, we're looking at teaching or academic options, how to develop that teaching experience. We're looking at working or volunteering abroad, which was, which is a really popular choice from the doctors that we're seeing. We're looking at expedition medicine in detail, and also some non-clinical options. Emma, hopefully, if you have arrived, if you could let some latecomers in, and as I say, just let me know if there's any particular chat questions that I need to pick up. I'll be obliged to you. Thank you. Okay, so I think the first thing to really mention, and you may be aware of this already, there's been a huge shift over the last 10 to 12 years in terms of attitudes to going straight into specialty from foundation training. As you see, in 2010, roughly about 83% went straight through into a specialty or other training program, whereas now it's roughly around 38%. So much more doctors in training taking time out after foundation for a variety of reasons, which we'll look at now. So why F3? I mean, critical question to answer for yourselves individually in terms of, why you should take this time out rather than go straight into specialty and sort of keep on the treadmill or the escalator in terms of training, if you like. And as I put there, it's really, don't feel guilty. You've been obviously through foundation training, you've obviously coming out through the pandemic as well, and there's obviously that's going to take a lot out of you. So it's really critical to sort of use some of this time to actually recharge and sort of recover, possibly from moving towards burnout, indeed, in terms of some of the trainees that we've seen. But it also gives you time to actually reflect on your experience, reflect on what you have learned, reflect on what medicine means to you, the type of doctor that you want to be, what you've enjoyed, what you found challenging. And you might not be in the sort of mind frame to actually make that actual specific decision to go straight into specialty now. So it's actually giving you that time to sort of reset and think about what actually fulfills you and satisfies you. And also, I think, as well, maybe identifying gaps in your training, so or in terms of the experience that you've had so far. So you might think, actually, I'd like to kind of go into a specific specialty, but I feel like I need to be stronger in this particular area to give myself the best chance of getting in there. So again, taking some time out, you could develop your clinical experience, you could develop your knowledge in particular areas, but you also might want to sort of just build confidence in your skills. You might have actually had experience in an area, but you feel, actually, I need to sort of feel stronger in that. I need to practice it a lot more. I need to get more experience in EM or, anesthetics or whatever it is in this terms of specialty that you're interested in before making that definite specialty decision. Again, another key area for as I say, thinking about an F3 is developing your network. As I say, you may not have the network at the moment to give you the opportunities to develop that experience, and taking this time out, this is, can be critical to sort of thinking about that and in developing your network. Maybe getting involved in groups to develop audits, to develop presentations, posters. You may want to also use this time to finish off exams as well. So a variety of areas, as I say, variety of reasons, really, and it really depends on your individual circumstances. Another one there, in terms of income, you may have specific ideas in terms of if you wanted to work abroad. Obviously, you could work as a locum for a while to get the income to actually fund that trip, or as I say, fund a particular project that you have in mind. Exploration we've already alluded to in terms of working abroad, but obviously life as well. A lot of the trainees that we see want to use the time to actually move house, to actually buy a house, possibly get married. Some have children, and it also all use the time to actually relocate. They've done their foundation training in London. They may want to move to another part of the UK, or go back to their sort of home location in the UK, or indeed move abroad. So again, there's a variety of reasons there, and they're all valid in terms of choosing an F3. Okay, so moving swiftly on, we're going to look at the first area, or kind of key popular area within the let's say within taking an F3, and that's really locum posts. I notice at this point, Emma, if you're here, just before we go on, could you just come on the mic and just let me know, because I think there are some people still waiting to come in, and if not, I'll come out and let them in myself.
No, I'm still here. I don't think there are.
Ah, you've let them in.
I've let
Brilliant.
them all in, yeah.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for letting me know.
No
Okay, so going back to locum posts. So as you'll see there, really popular option for a sort of variety of reasons in terms of, firstly, the flexibility compared to what you've been through in terms of your training in foundation. You've got that flexibility. You can choose when you work, you can choose where you work. So you've got that flexibility around, as I say, the days that you work, the hours that you work, but also the location, the hospitals within reason. But also there's the pay aspect. You will get paid more as a locum rather than doing a staff grade or a SAS grade job. Indeed, I think there's been some research done recently where you could earn as a locum the same salary as you would be getting as an F1 or F2 in just 2 to 3 days, depending, on where you're working and the number of hours that you're working. Obviously, this is individual to you in terms of your circumstances, but it's a key consideration. And I guess the other benefit is the experience that you can get as a locum in terms of you can work in a variety of areas, so you can get that variety of clinical experience, possibly in areas of interest. But also the other thing to consider is you're getting that experience of possibly working in different trusts, in different hospitals, in different departments. So you get an idea of the culture in those, and the as I say, the sort of hierarchy or the politics, if you like, within that trust, whether that's going to suit you or whether it's not, as the case may be. So again, it's all really good data for you in terms of making a career decision. But obviously there's a flip side. There is a flip side, like with everything, but in terms of locum posts, it's these particular factors that I've highlighted there. Obviously, compared to other areas, locuming in London is competitive. So in terms of the specific areas that you might be interested in working in, it's thinking about how strong is your CV, what have you been involved in terms of possibly previous experience, possibly research, audit, that may give you an edge to get that specific locum role that you're looking at. The other thing is, obviously we've talked about the pay aspect, but the flip side is that obviously not being on a specific contract, you are just there to provide service, and if that service isn't needed in terms of cover, they can cancel. So you can get late cancellations, which can potentially have an impact on your monthly income. So again, that's something to think about. Third issue here, limited development and training. You won't get the supervisional study budget that you get as a staff grade or a SAS grade doctor, or indeed in a specialty training post. However, that's not to say it's impossible to get this stuff. The benefit that you have as being a locum is that you have more flexibility. You may not be working to a fixed contract, as I say, or a full-time contract as a staff grade or SAS grade would. So it's very much down to you to sort of get involved, maybe speak to the audit lead within the actual trust, or the QI lead, to maybe get involved in projects, maybe to look at PDSA cycles or OSCEs that you could get involved in, just to sort of develop your experience that way. So you have got some flexibility. But obviously there are limited benefits as well. Not being in a contract, you won't get the sick pay or annual leave that you would if you were in a staff grade post. And finally, solitude. Obviously, if you are working in different areas as a locum, different hospitals, different trusts, you won't embed within a team as much potentially as you would as a staff grade, or indeed within a training program. Few things to think about there, but obviously aware of time. And I think in terms of just resources to sort of look at this in a bit more detail, I think in terms of jobs, things I just wanted to flag up. If you are thinking of locum, register with a bank staff at your local hospital or trust, or the hospitals or trusts you're interested in. There are, some key agencies out there, and I strongly recommend looking at the Messley Locum Doctor Hub. Messley is a website, if you haven't been there already, that's set up by some doctors in training a few years ago. And the key sort of benefits of this in terms of locum, and they kind of specialize in locum, really, locum sort of focus, is that they have a matching service, Trustpilot rated matching service, in terms of you put your details in there and they're linked in with all the trusts in London, possibly wider, maybe Kent, Surrey and Sussex, in terms of locum posts. So it's literally like a locum agency, but it's specifically set up with doctors and by doctors for your particular needs. So have a look at that. Also, they have a locum calculator, so you can model how you'd like to work. So you can put in the hours that you'd like to work and the sort of shift periods, and you then get an idea of the income that you would get from that. So you can play around with it, which is quite useful. The other thing, they have specialty sections in terms of, if you're interested in working in EM specifically, for example, or you might be interested in sort of trying to get some experience in anesthetics. Again, they have specialty sections around locuming in those areas that you might want to look at. They'll give you a few tips to actually get into those areas. That's a quick whiz through locum, but as I say, you've got the Messley hub details there. Any questions in the chat so far, Emma? No? Okay, we're good to go. Okay, so over we go again. So we've also looked at locum. We're looking more at the other option in terms of non-training that you can do in F3, and that's obviously the trust grade, the SAS grade post, and what could be the sort of benefits in that. Indeed, you can continue with SAS grade posts and actually get to equivalency of training through the CSER route if need be. Obviously, it's a bit more challenging. Well, actually, it can be a lot more challenging in terms of responsibilities, much more on you in terms of providing the evidence to sign off for competencies or equivalent competencies that you get in training, but it's not impossible. And the benefits that you get, obviously, from working in SAS, there is similarity in terms of actually you'd have some more flexibility, possibly a better work-life balance. You may not get as much on-call depending on the actual role and the staff grade post, as against working through the sort of specialty system. And obviously, I think the sort of other key things to sort of consider here is that it is more of a permanent position. Well, it is a permanent position. Usually they can last for a year, or they can sort of roll over and keep on going. But being a permanent position, you would possibly get more access to training than you would as a locum. You'd also get the benefits as well. You'd get the sick pay, you get the annual leave, that kind of thing to consider. In terms of accessing those posts, they usually tend to come out from around April through to sort of September or October, depending on sort of gaps. Some of these gaps can be, identified early, but obviously some of the gaps may be coming from doctors in training who've, for whatever reason, withdrawn from their training program. So there could be sort of late options coming through in August and September as well. What I'd say to you, if you were interested in sort of looking at trust grade, is put the feelers out early. If there is a particular specialty area that you're interested in, then sort of reach out to people in that area that you're interested in doing a staff grade role. put your head above the parapet, so to speak, in terms of making them aware of your interest. But register with Staff Bank as well within the trust that you're interested in working in. But also some of these roles, if you're not on social media already, I'm sure most of you are, but it's worth looking at Twitter. So linking into the Twitter feed for the actual hospital. Some of these posts get advertised that way, but also LinkedIn as well. If you're not on LinkedIn, and I'm probably going to bang on about this a little bit in terms of there's a lot of opportunities by being on LinkedIn that you might be missing if you aren't on there. So again, think about the sort of social media aspect. But a final point in terms of trust grade and locum, I guess, as well, that I wanted to flag up here is the 18-month rule. So what that means is that, say you did continue trust grade doctor roles or locum roles for 2 years, say in EM or say in maybe a surgical discipline, that could preclude you if you then decided to actually apply for specialty, because there's a bar in that you shouldn't have clinical experience over 18 months in a particular specialty area before you actually apply. So just bear that in mind. If you wanted, again, there's links there. If you wanted to sort of get some more detail on, what it's like to be a staff grade doctor, experience, links, that kind of thing, you got the link there to the Royal College of Physicians. There's some good, good sort of content there that you can get further information. Okay, so moving swiftly on, kind of looking at the third aspect or popular aspect, which kind of has a clinical element to it for doctors considering F3, is fellowship program. And again, a lot of opportunities here in terms of fellowships. In the clinical sphere, but also in terms of teaching, in terms of research, in terms of management, and a mixture possibly of those aspects as well within the fellowship. So a lot of opportunities. They tend to be 1-year posts. And as I say, you can have specific posts that are just, say, teaching, for example, or management, or you can get a mix. So it could be, as I say, as part of your remit in terms of your fellowship, you are going to do a bit of clinical, you are going to do a bit of teaching, you are going to do a bit of project work. So it's important to sort of get the granular detail in terms of actually what's the plan for the fellowship. If you want to get right away from the clinical aspect for a while, just want to concentrate purely on teaching, make sure you look at that in a bit more detail. The level in terms of clinical, they're usually ST1 equivalent. And where you actually find these posts, variety of areas. They're available within the HEIs, universities. They're available within trusts. They're available within PCNs, primary care networks, and also within sort of the more bigger, NHS type institutions. Health Education England, where we're from in terms of the education program, we have fellows coming in every year, looking at areas like differential attainment, working on the sort of teaching and education aspects, but also Public Health England as well. Again, another area that has fellowships. There, as you'll see there, the Darzi Fellowship Programme, you've got the Faculty of Medical Leadership, you've got Tophole Digital Fellowship. So again, you've got that variety there. The other kind of bonus, if you like, in terms of doing a fellowship, say, as against doing staff grade or doing a locum, is that often you'll get funded and time to do qualifications. So, for example, a lot of trainees that go into fellowship maybe pick up a postgraduate certificate in education or a diploma in education as part of their fellowship, which is funded. Or other ones offer more leadership-based postgraduate certificates. So again, it's an excellent way, both in terms of developing your skill set in a particular area if you wanted more of a portfolio career, but also getting those applications which are going to help with your specialty application in terms of points down the road as well. So definitely an option to look at in more detail if you haven't already, to consider.
We do have a question, John. There is a
Sorry.
question about it. It's where is the best place to find research fellowships?
Research fellowships. It's a good one. I would say, I mean, again, it depends on the area that the area of interest. I mean, they can pop up wherever. So again, it may be the medical schools, depending on the area of research they're interested in, but they can occur in trusts occasionally. Possibly in terms of the research side, I would say the sort of bigger organisations. So it depends on the actual research. But for example, the trainee that we've got working with us, who has just come out of F2, she's F3 now. She's doing differential attainment, so she's doing research around differential attainment in terms of progression of doctors with specific characteristic sets as against other trainees. So looking at why some trainees with particular characteristics tend to progress faster or kind of quicker than other trainees, and doing that kind of research. That's a sort of big issue at the moment, and other sort of more project-based research. So I would say the short answer is, in terms of the project-based research, I would say look to sort of the bigger organisations or the HEIs. But as I say, it's generic. I think you should kind of keep your feelers out in all of those areas. And obviously NHS jobs is a key one. Fellowships are advertised there all the time. So I would say those areas to look at in particular.
There's just one other question, John.
Sure.
I think it's, do FY placements count towards the 18-month threshold?
No.
No.
No. It's because the FY is within its it's going to be post FY. So when I mentioned that point, FY is a sort of part of a specific training program. You're only going to be doing sort of 6-month placements. That particular example is where you, as I say, you do a staff grade role for about 2 or 3 years, and you think, actually now I'm ready for specialty, and then you find actually you're barred from actually going into specialty program because you've done so much staff grade. Your competencies or your equivalence competencies maybe past the sort of ST1 ST2 stage. That's the reason they stop it. In that context, I mean, again, it depends on it. Really, you need to speak to the Royal College to get further information. But usually, when you look at the person specs for each specialty at ST1, they will highlight that within the person spec. But best to check with the Royal College if in doubt. And as I say, you've always got the CSER route if you did want to sort of still get equivalence to CCT by not going through the specialty training program. Any other questions before I move on?
No,
Nope.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, so we've obviously looked at locum, we've looked at staff grade, we've looked at fellowships, and it's obviously thinking about, well, okay, they all look great, but I need to think about my CV. How do I make myself competitive? How do I make myself stand out? And that's kind of what we're going to just pick up a little bit of here. Loads of really good resources, links. I've put a couple down there in terms of sort of developing your awareness of this in a bit more detail. But the key, and I'm sure Emma would agree with this as well, the key thing in terms of CVs above anything else is making sure it's tailored. So making sure if you're going for a particular role, think about, put yourself in the position of the actual selection panel. What would they be looking for? What, in terms of, if it's I don't know, a sort of staff grade post in EM, what skills would you particularly want to highlight in terms of your experience, in terms of possibly audits that you've been involved in or research that you've been involved in, or the kind of specific skill set? So think about that. Tailor your CV to each application. Make it sort of, as I say, specialty specific in terms of, if you're going for a specific project, but also it's not just about the kind of core clinical skills. It's about the improvement projects. So again, if you can show, like, as I say, you've looked at things, so any audit cycles that you've been involved in, really good to sort of flag those up. any kind of previous experience in terms of locum or bank shifts. So if you are going for a locum post, if you've got previous experience, that's going to really I know some foundation trainees have had do the extra locum shifts as well. Make sure you put that on there, and obviously qualifications, relevant courses, so ALS, ATLS, the MRCP. Again, that's all going to stand in your favour by putting that in there. One point there I should mention though is obviously if you are going to put things on your CV, make sure you've got the evidence to back it up within your portfolio. So if you are called for interview, they may ask for that. So make sure you've got all your certificates in order as well. I guess the other thing to mention as well is, it's not just about the clinical side. A lot of recruiters want to see the all-round you as well. So, in terms of interests outside medicine, it could be languages, it could be, as I say, the sort of team-based interest. Reason being is they possibly think, if you've got that sort of holistic kind of, if you can show that holistic side of things, it may benefit you in terms of kind of balancing your well-being. So again, it's a good thing to sort of put down. I guess we've talked about commitment already. The other key things, I think, just a few sort of presentation points. Length, I would say 2 pages is the ideal length, really, because you've got to think of it. They're not going to be spending much time on these CVs. They're going to get a lot of CVs. You want it to stand out and get the key information as much as possible. Some trainees make the mistake of putting reams and reams of conferences that they've attended down, or prizes. Great, but think about it again in terms of what's relevant for this particular post. Do you need to put everything down? Possibly not. If you can type down, to 2 pages in a really consistent format where you've checked the grammar, you've checked the spelling, it's going to stand you in good stead. The other key one I wanted to flag up is a lot of trainees think you should put a photo with your CV. The short answer there is no. There's no requirement for you to do that. It doesn't give you any really benefit. In fact, actually, it could go the other way because there could be unconscious bias, that kind of thing. So by leaving your photo off, you are as I say, you're basically being on the same page with everyone else, so to speak, with those that haven't produced photos. So again, definitely wouldn't put a photo on your CV there. You've got some key links there. Medical CV for locum doctors, Messley, they've got a standard sort of template for a doctor's CV that you can look at. You've also got some links from the BMJ careers. And also, again, it's important for those of you that are thinking, well, actually, I want to look for some work, but I just want to get away from the clinical side of things in my F3 year, looking at doing other stuff, following other interests. Great. I direct you to the example CVs page on the Prospects website, which again gives you a sort of slightly different approach in terms of what you should be promoting in terms of your transferable skills, because you're all going to have those as doctors in terms of the particular posts that you might be applying for. Okay.
There's one question,
Sure.
John. Do we need a paper portfolio or just online, e.g. Horace?
It's a really good question, actually. I guess it would depend on the actual post, in terms of trust. I'm just thinking if it was a staff grade post or a fellowship that you were applying for, they may ask you to upload copies or scan copies of documents. In terms of supporting your application, they may ask you to actually bring copies to your interview. As I say, I don't think there's one standard answer. It really depends on what's required by the actual recruiter. So obviously, what I would say, you'll have a link, whoever you're applying to, or in the actual detail that they've sent you, is check what's required. But as I say, I don't think there's one hard and fast rule there. Okay. So moving on to that, we've talked about the sort of the working side, if you like, and obviously there's an aspect of working here, but this is, you know, one of the most popular sort of areas, if you like, for doctors in training considering taking an F3 or indeed an F4. You know, let's not just say it's a 1 year. Quite a few of the trainees we see want to take more than 1 year, especially if they're possibly working abroad. So obviously really popular choice. Just a few things to sort of consider is, firstly, I'd say the areas of work and why this is important. You know, if you're thinking of maybe going to Australia or Canada or New Zealand, is actually they tend to give work to, you know, any kind of opportunities are given to sort of homegrown nationals first. So you've got to think about, you know, where are the gaps? Where am I most likely to get positions? And you know, in terms of Australia, New Zealand, it's going to be in areas like, you know, emergency medicine, possibly primary care, as well. But other areas that you could consider if you wanted to sort of work abroad in a clinical capacity is expedition medicine, which we're going to look at in a minute. But obviously working for charities as well, which is sort of more the voluntary area, which I'm going to pick up in a minute. So where, I think, you know, before moving on in terms of this area, where can you find out information about where these posts are? A couple of critical sort of links that I'd flag up. If you haven't already, look at Adventure Medic. There's a lot of really good information there about preparing for working abroad, but also the actual opportunities, both in terms of how you know, if you want to apply for work in Australia, you know, how you do that. And obviously key considerations are or the most difficult bit, I guess, is, you know, finding the job placement and then getting the visa. And where you'd actually look for, you know, those particular posts. As I say, I've talked about Adventure Medic, but Messley, again, they have a lot of information, lot of job opportunities on there, the BMJ as well. But again, it's taking that extra step and thinking, okay, I'd like to work, say, in New South Wales in Australia, state of New South Wales. Each state will have its own, the state board will have its own sort of job site as well. So it's kind of linking into that job site and seeing what's available. I think the key thing, as I said, with Australia, and I'm not going to get into the specifics in terms of detail, there are some links that I'm going to allude to at the end of the presentation tonight, but it's thinking about time in terms of time that you need to prepare for all this, particularly in terms of, you know, linking in, getting the post, thinking about visas, thinking about what you'll actually need to kind of live and work out there. So again, it could be things like you might not have thought about. So obviously there's the flights and the visa side of things, but you know, you might need medicals, you might need to pay for COVID certificates, you might need to think about the sort of registration and how long that process takes within the country that you're applying to. You might have to go through extra training. Say with Australia, it tends to be limited. There is, I think, you can be called a hospital non-specialist, where you don't need to sort of follow any particular exams. I think with other areas such as New Zealand, or possibly the US definitely, you may have to sort of think about further qualifications. With the US, it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's not as obviously easy as it is, or relatively easy as it is to sort of work abroad in Australia, New Zealand. Canada as well could be another option, but Canada, America is a bit more complicated. But as I say, to get more specific information for whichever country you're going to, I would refer to the links that I mentioned. But key things to think about is really registration, time, in terms of getting it all together, and the visas as well. Other points to sort of consider is really about the insurance side of things as well. Again, key consideration in terms of not only, you know, insurance for your traveling, the traveling aspects, but also, you know, indemnity in terms of working abroad. You know, has the insurance you've got, does it cover you? You know, how will you be insured in the actual area that you're going to? Again, this should be considered and discussed with the employer that you're speaking to before you actually go out there. I just also wanted to pick up on the volunteering aspect. So if you're thinking of actually looking to sort of volunteer, a couple of things there to think about is with volunteering, the opportunities can be a little bit more restricted depending on the level of experience that you have. Some volunteering agencies may look for at least 4 years experience before they would allow you to sort of volunteer within a particular area. However, there can be specific programs, volunteering programs that you can link to. There's an organization called Red R. I think the link may be at the end of the presentation, that has a lot of information about voluntary opportunities for those that maybe haven't done at least 4 years. Also, Adventure Medic will have that information on there as well. But things to promote if you're thinking about volunteering, or things to think about is maybe languages. If you've got French, if you've got Spanish, if you've got other languages, working possibly in sort of developing countries, that would be beneficial. Also, a lot of doctors in training think about doing the diploma in tropical medicine before they go. Again, that can bring an added aspect in terms of maybe giving you an added edge in terms of your application for sort of doing volunteering. So again, just a few things to think about there. In terms of, the registration and license to practice, I've put that up there because obviously with the license to practice, you need that to be or undertake clinical work within the UK. You might not necessarily need it to do it in another country. So some doctors, decide to let their license practice lapse while they're away. But if you do keep it, obviously what you've got to think about if you're working abroad is that on an annual basis you still need to provide a medical or get a medical appraisal, and the actual information that you need to compile in terms of portfolio for that. So again, that's something to consider, how you're going to compile that, who's going to sign that off. So something to consider there. And obviously revalidation every 5 years, as you must all be aware, you need to get revalidated. So depending on how long you might be out there, or when your next revalidation is, it's something to sort of consider. In terms of the timeline as well, another biggie is the specialty interview timeline. So say you think, yeah, I want to work abroad, or I want to volunteer abroad, and I might be out there for a couple of years before I maybe come back and apply for specialty. Obviously, with COVID, we've moved more recently to a virtual kind of interviewing framework. I think someone hasn't muted. If you are coming in, if you could mute.
Evening.
Right, I think we're on mute now. Brilliant, thank you, whoever that was. In terms of as I say, I was talking about the specialty interviews. So you might be abroad, you might want to apply for specialty interviews, but as I say, we were working along a virtual interview framework because of the pandemic. It's changed. Some still do virtual interviews, but a lot are maybe moving more back to old style face-to-face interviewing, and therefore there will be expectation that you're there. There may be flexibility, so you can do virtual interview from abroad, but not always. So again, it's something to consider, in terms of if you apply, do you need to be back in the country to do an interview for the specialty that you're interested in? The final point is the BMJ Careers Fair. Now, you may have been to this before. It's usually run every October. I've just done some searching to see if the dates are out yet. They haven't appeared yet on the BMJ website, which is unusual because usually it's running in October, November time. But I'd still say keep looking at that. Why? It's usually held in Olympia, I think, over a couple of days. There's loads of stalls there in terms of opportunities of working abroad. That's why I've sort of flagged it up here. So again, just to sort of keep that on your radar if working abroad is something that you're interested in doing as part of an F3. Okay, so just linking in terms of the working abroad side of things, a popular option is expedition medicine. And And I just thought I'd kind of give you a few sort of, sort of takeaway bullet points around this. I think the first thing to say about expedition medicine that you've got to be asking yourself is, do you have the right stuff for this? And what I mean by that is you've got to be honest to yourself in terms of, do you have the clinical skills that they're looking for? So if you're, you are sort of putting in your application, yes, I'm a mountain medic. Do you know what that means? Do you know what's expected in terms of the skill set or the clinical skill set? But also, that's one side of it. But if you're working as an expedition medic, you've also got to be at the level and better in terms of outdoor activities. So in terms of are you going to be fit enough to keep on going? If it's I don't know, a sort of mountain trek type thing, it's that kind of stuff that you just need to sort of take into account. And you've got the FPHC guidelines on medical provision that gives you an outline of the competencies that you would have to meet. So as I say, that just have a look at that if you are considering expedition medicine as a starting point. But it's not just about clinical stuff. A lot of the time, actually, clinical stuff is a very small part of the job that you're doing. It's these other skills, these kind of more transferable skills. So, you may be involved in logistics, you might be involved in evacuation, if you've got a very poorly person on the expedition with you. It's about communication in terms of the comms. You might be in a very remote area. How do you actually communicate there? And obviously making sure that you've got all the supplies being organized, that kind of thing. So again, thinking of that skill set and how you're kind of going to promote that in your application. Another really big one here is the actual contract. And there's a few kind of key things to think about in terms of what is or is not included. So again, when you're looking at what's being offered, are they going to pay for the flight? Are they going to pay for your kit? Are they going to pay for indemnity? And do you have any allowances, any kind of costs? Are you going to get paid? Some offer this 10% rule where they will they will give you 10% off as I say, the cost of the expedition. But then you may find that actually it doesn't really give you anything because you've still got to pay for things like your kit, indemnity, etc., etc. So look at the granular detail, look at the fine print in any contract that you're getting. Another point is the ethics. So what I'm sort of alluding to here is, with a lot of the expeditions, you will have porters depending on where you're going. Now, some expedition companies may be more ethically concerned than others, i.e., you may not just be supporting the people that have paid for the trip. You may be supporting the porters, or you may not. Some companies don't have they are ethically dubious. So again, look at the IPGG, which I've put there. I think the link is at the end of the slideshow. They I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but they give an overview of ethical guidelines in terms of supporting sort of porters if you are kind of working on that particular trip. So again, it's looking at that and thinking, does that align with your particular values, and looking for the IPGG ethics on any company that you're thinking of applying to in terms of expedition medicine. Final point, or a couple of points, is indemnity. If you are paying for indemnity, again, look at the detail. Are you going to be a lead medic or are you going to be a sole medic? There is a difference in terms of cost and actually what's covered. And then finally, qualifications. If you are thinking seriously of doing expedition medicine, a bit like doing the diploma in tropical medicine, there are courses that you can do. There's a variety. Usually, and there's a variety of costs. Some are run over here. In places like Wales and Scotland. Some are run in Europe. There's obviously a difference in cost there. They tend to be sort of 3 or 4 day type courses. Over here, roughly they're in a region of about £1,000. If you do go abroad, then you're possibly looking at, well, you are looking at sort of £2,000 to £3,000, depending on actually where you go. So it's not cheap. But if it's something that you're thinking of doing, some doctors we work with do this for a number of years, or they may do it, they may sort of work do some, go sort of less than full time and do it that way. So a couple of key links there. You've got Adventure Medic, but Wilderness Medic as well, or World Extreme Medicine is the actual site. They have a lot of the key kind of expedition medicine courses. So that's just a sort of a taster in terms of things to think about in terms of expedition medicine. We might move more now to sort of areas that tradies are interested in terms of, which is kind of more homegrown, but can sort of develop as part of a portfolio career. So we've got teaching, which is again really, really popular. A couple of sort of points to just to flag up here. First thing to think about is actually your experience. Try and get experience in your foundation years. So it's things like getting involved in induction, or possibly teaching skills for exams, or maybe getting involved in OSCEs in some way. Any kind of teaching experience will help, but also think about your areas of interest. So if you are interested in teaching, what areas of teaching are you interested in? Is it the delivery, or is it actually the sort of course planning? Is it assessment? Is it mentoring? Whatever it is, actually think about that area. And if you are going for teaching type roles or fellowships, how much of that are you going to get within that? Within F3, a sort of key way to get that teaching experience is going through teaching fellowships, or indeed anatomy demonstrator roles. A lot of teaching fellowship jobs out there, but there's a variety. Some are crossed over, or as I say, not just pure teaching or kind of curriculum development. They may have a clinical aspect to it, they may have a research aspect to it as well. So again, look in detail at what's actually involved. Some actually may have some on-call commitment. So again, it's very, it's important that you look at that. I think the other thing sort of think about as well, in terms of developing your experiences, qualifications. There are obviously a lot of qualification courses ranging from sort of postgraduate diploma or certificate in clinical education right through to masters that you can do. Some trainees we work with, they may well do the masters in clinical education. You can get funding through student funding, government funding, for masters qualifications in particular, up to about £12,000, I think at the moment. More detail through the Prospects website, which is linked in at the end of this presentation. But there are short courses as well. The RCP, Royal College of Physicians, offers a short kind of train the trainer or teach the teacher type short courses that are available as well. What I would say is, in terms of medical education, there's quite a high cost to it. It can kind of go up to £17,000 if you go for the full masters, depending on how you study. But there are a variety of ways. You can do it in blocks, you can do it in part-time, which can make it more affordable. There are hidden costs though that you should be aware of, so look into that. There can be enrollment fees, there can be travel to as I say, exam centres, and if you have to take resits, that could prove expensive as well. But there are also bursaries and grants through areas like the Royal College, Royal Society of Medicine. The actual universities themselves have bursaries. And then I just wanted to flag up TASME, which is, if you haven't heard of it already, the Trainees in the Association for the Study of Medical Education Committee. Again, if you are interested in teaching, and there's also ASME, which is the Association of Medical Educators, which is the sort of parent of TASME, if you like. Definitely get involved with TASME. I think there's a sort of student membership which isn't too expensive, but again, it will give you access to courses, it will give you access to networks that can possibly help you get the experience, or indeed placements that you're looking for in teaching. I've also highlighted a couple of articles there that give more detail around choosing medical education master's programs and the advantages of teaching fellowships, so you can get further information. And then just touching on further study, which is not sort of, we've obviously talked about clinical education, but there are other areas that you can obviously look at. So, for example, if you're interested in public health, a lot of trainees tend to do a master's in public health before they actually apply to their public health training, which, as I say, may cut down the actual education years. Or you may have a specific interest in a clinical area that you just want to develop, because obviously this would be beneficial for your specialty application. There are leadership modules as well. They're free. They're available through Health Education Leadership sort of leadership team, which there's a variety that are available. Edward Jenner program I've highlighted in terms of Leadership Academy there. That's the sort of first level. It's free. You can get some core leadership skills and qualifications that you can utilize to put on your CV. And then obviously there's the clinical side as well. So you may want to pick up things like ATLS or ALS during your gap year, which again is going to be beneficial if you want to move into the more acute specialties. Okay. So we now turn to alternatives in medicine. And before, as I say, what we've got on the slide here, you'll see there's a variety of things. It's just a sort of a snapshot of the kind of things in terms of the trainees that we work with that they move into, that they're quite interested in. But before I pick up on any of this, I think it's really for you to actually take stock and think about actually what do you want to do? When I say you, it's actually what gives you fulfillment, and taking a moment to sort of think about that in terms of what gives you satisfaction. What are the sort of the preferences, the skills that you like using, when you sort of think about your experience today, when have you been in that zone, when you, as I say, everything seems to be clicking into place and you're really enjoying what you're doing. What strengths were you using there? What skills were you using? What sort of values do they align with? And this kind of links back into the self-awareness aspect that we've talked about previously on previous webinars. And if you haven't looked at those, I'd invite you to, before you start looking at indeed whatever career that you're interested in. And then also just identify those transferable skills. Yeah, you're going to have loads of them, useful for medicine, but also useful for a variety of other careers. So it all starts with you. Before you start jumping into different career areas, think about what your core criteria is that's important to you for any job. And the kind of other thing I just wanted to mention is actually don't limit yourself. A lot of doctors, can limit themselves in terms of actually it has to be one way. But what opportunities could be you closing down by thinking like that? So having an F3 is a really ideal opportunity to follow your curiosity in terms of things you're always interested in, but never kind of really, got around to sort of looking at in more detail. Be flexible, keep more of an open mind as opportunities might come to you. And I think another key one is actually how risk averse are you? And thinking about that, actually being a bit more open to risk may open up more opportunities to you. So again, as I say, there may be a post that comes up that's not exactly what you want, but it's thinking, well, actually, if I go there, I could develop some skills. I may link in with some people that may lead me to where I want to be. So, keep a bit of more of an open mind and sort of, as I say, take a sort of a more objective view of the options that you're looking at. And you've got the link for the self-awareness there. Other key one I just wanted to mention, linked there, alternative careers for doctors, is medic footprints. And if you are interested in alternatives, you're thinking about developing a portfolio career, then I would strongly recommend looking at medic footprints. There's loads of great information on there in terms of a variety of non-medical careers, or for doctors that moved into non-medical careers. There's case studies, lots of good stuff on there. There's also lots of links to Facebook groups for doctors who have moved out of clinical work. Okay, just picking that up finally, and I know we're just running a little bit over time, but I just wanted to sort of pick a couple of last points. Health tech, I'm going to go through this very quickly. Just pick that one up because it is quite popular at the moment for trainees who are taking F3 or looking to sort of come out of clinical work. Again, if you are thinking of the sort of health tech thing, it's really thinking about your experience today in terms of what your experience of innovation within a clinical setting is. You know, you may want to reflect on, you know, how tech has provided or not provided a good patient experience, or, you know, how, you know, in terms of your use of tech, you're thinking actually there's a better way of doing this in terms of the user interface. But again, with a lot of non-clinical careers, it's about networking. It's about, you know, it's not necessarily a dirty word. It is about actually, you know, understanding different careers, you know, promoting your interest in those careers and making links to, as I say, understand and as I say, ask questions to clarify, is this a realistic opportunity for me? Critically, upskilling will be useful if you're thinking of health tech. You can either do it online. There's machine learning for healthcare courses, which are free, available on Medic Footprints that I mentioned. Or again, you know, some trainees we work with have moved into doing masters in things like health data science or tech entrepreneurship. So those masters courses are available on the website, Prospect's website, to look at in more detail. There's also fellowships as well. So a lot of the stuff that we've talked through already, there are opportunities in the areas of that you may have interest in, such as teaching fellowships, but also there's tech fellowships in the NHS. For like digital pioneer fellowships, there's a top hole program, there's the NHS clinical entrepreneur program. So if you've got an idea, it doesn't necessarily have to be clinical, sorry, not clinical, tech, but if it's something that you want to develop, then look at that program. And there's mentoring available as well. Nova, the digital health sign up agency, is set up to support those individuals who are interested in health tech but want a mentor to help them move into that area as part of their career portfolio. Just wanted to flag up Doctors Digital Collective. You'll see the link at the bottom there. That's a Facebook group for doctors who've moved into the digital health tech arena. So if that's where your interest lies, I'd recommend linking in with them. Finally, we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, and I want to apologize for it. Networking or connecting is really, really important. And it's, you know, F3 is a really, really valuable time to do this in terms of the understanding, the context and the content of opportunities. You know, we've mentioned this in terms of the locum work, by kind of, you know, networking and getting an understanding of particular roles and the culture within trusts, but also through networks, you get an understanding of where the opportunities are and how you might apply for them, that you might not get by, as I say, keeping your network limited, and understanding what the actual process of the recruitment, so you can make your application stronger. It will also give you the opportunity to maybe strengthen your application by getting involved and the opportunity to develop and promote your skills, such as within audits, presentations, projects, that kind of thing. And as I say, it enhances your profile, you know, in terms of by working on these projects, other colleagues get an idea of your strengths and your interests, and can highlight opportunities and indeed promote you for opportunities that may come up. And just picking this up, we have produced a webinar on networking for clinicians. The link's there. As I say, you know, it could give you some more detail there. So I know, apologies, we have gone a little bit over this evening, but we are coming to the end now. So really what I just want to ask you, I've gone through a lot of information and I know it may feel a bit overwhelming, but hopefully there's some things that you've taken from tonight that you will find valuable. And what I'd like to ask you to do is actually just consider one step that you're going to commit to in terms of planning your F3 from what I've just said, and actually what will you do, when will you do it? So kind of, you might want to make a note in your phone, or you want to write something out, but actually, you know, be it researching a particular option, be it maybe thinking about someone that works in an area that you work with that you might want to link with, whatever it is, as I say, identify that and use that as a first step, really. And then just some final links to finish. I've mentioned, if you have found this valuable, but you want to sort of talk through things with us in a more one-to-one space, then you can apply for a careers appointment with us through that link there. In terms of training, particularly, or any questions about training, you've got the PGMD support portal. The national recruitment webinar, I think the date has maybe just come out. I think it's about the 13th, which might be next week. That's obviously the reason I'm flagging that up. That's really around those of you that may still, as well as considering F3, you want to get more detail about specialty recruitment. We've done our own webinar, but this is the national one that's probably more focused on the oral aspect. And then you've got the Foundation Doctors web pages, which I've already alluded to, with the links there. And then finally, some of the links that I've mentioned. I've started off with the Facebook groups. There's Foundation Year 3 Doctors group. There's an F3 in Australia, New Zealand. There's also Alternative Careers for Doctors. So again, you may want to join those kind of groups. And then you'll see there's a variety of links there to some of the organisations that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. That is it. I know it's been a very big whiz through. I hope you got something out of tonight.
There are a
What I
couple
would
of
ask.
questions, John. Sorry, there are a couple of questions
Go for it.
if you like. Yeah.
Sure.
So just wanted to just double check where the slides go. Do they get circulated, or where can the links be found?
Sure. Okay. Great question. So basically what we'll be doing after today, we'll hopefully get the links out to you, or the slides out to you tomorrow. So you'll get a full slide deck. So whoever's attended tonight will get a full slide deck from us. There is also the F3 page, which I think is in the link in the previous slide, which will have all the links and a lot more besides for what we've talked about before, what we've talked about within this presentation. But you will get the slide deck tomorrow. And what was the second one, Emma?
The second one is if you do a locum year, does your agency handle the yearly appraisal?
Ooh, that's a good question. I wouldn't like to say definitely. I think they do, some do. But again, what I would say with, not sitting on the fence, I couldn't say definitely all of them will definitely do that. I think some will, but it's a key question that you should ask. So if you are interested in engaging in locum, in terms of, as I say, arranging that assessment, you should, in terms of your negotiations, flag that up with them. And if they're not going to do that, then obviously you need to think about, actually, is there a contact that you have through the actual trust? I would guess if you can't get it through the locum agency, the next best place to sort of link in with would be the GMC. They would have advice on that, or indeed the BMA.
I've got a couple of other questions,
Sure.
actually. Just somebody said, apologies if I missed this. So that's Anne. Would you recommend continuing completing our e-horoscope portfolio during our F3, e.g. if we are working abroad?
So just completing your, I think so. I mean, I think in terms of, I think I've alluded to this before. So in terms of keeping your registration, keeping your license, I think, yeah, as I say, keeping that your horse portfolio up to date, any kind of evidence in terms of signing off and competencies is going to be valuable for you. So as I say, keep that going if you can. Anything that you think is relevant, especially if you're thinking of going into a specialty later on, then yeah, put it in that portfolio.
Just a question about losing the NHS email address when
Oh God,
F2 is finished. And so how do they go about finding locum job opportunities? How would you recommend finding those if you lose your NHS email address?
Well, in terms of locum opportunities specifically, it would be, as I say, you can apply obviously to locum agencies directly, or you can apply to the sort of trust agencies before. They would be the sort of the two areas, in terms of the bank or the actual locum agencies. So you can you would be able to access those opportunities that way. Maybe I'm not understanding the question specifically. I didn't know whether there's an actual
I-
bar to it.
I think it's actually just a question with some couple of questions really in it, in that are NHS emails lost when F2s are completed? And then because that's also a way of finding job opportunities. They probably come through on that through email a lot.
Okay,
I
I've got you.
presume from what's
Yeah,
being
yeah,
said.
I've got you now.
So
Okay.
so it's like, how else will they be advertised? I'd presume, wouldn't they be going on to NHS jobs?
Yeah, I mean, so locum, I mean, again, I think, yeah, so to kind of qualify that, staff grade roles, SAS roles, fixed term roles, non-specialty type roles, they'll be advertised on NHS jobs, or they'll be advertised on the the Trust website job pages. So you'll be able to access them that way if you keep that. You know, you can link into the Twitter feed as well. So again, they'll be maybe coming through on the Twitter feed for that particular trust as well. So that's another way to sort of do it. In terms of, you know, other ways of sort of finding out about those opportunities, those positions. In terms of fellowships, again, they're advertised through NHS jobs or through the trust or through the universities themselves. So, you know, that's the way you can do it. I think in terms of those jobs that aren't advertised, that maybe kind of, you know, if there are any sort of that's just purely internal, yes, it is going to be difficult, but I think this is where you need to start early. So if you're thinking, look, I would actually like to stay in this hospital, or a particular hospital that's I've kind of had a good experience in, is putting the feelers out already. So when that opportunity comes up, and possibly if you've left, leave them your private email address so they can kind of contact you directly if need be, if there is an opportunity like that. I'm just looking at a couple of others because I've got it up now. So we've got Grace who's saying, if you take a full year out of medicine, just traveling, for instance, do you still need an appraisal? Also, how many years can you take out without any issues? Thank you for your talk. Thank you, Grace. Good question. I think you would. It depends on the license. So if you let your license lapse, then you don't need the medical appraisal. If you keep your license, then yes, you will need that. That's the point I made earlier. You will need that medical appraisal once a year. And then obviously there's the revalidation issue as well. In terms of how many years you can take out without any issues, really it's about, you know, if you do come back to specialty, it's showing, you know, what you've done really. So if you've just taken 2 years out and you've just traveled, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, then obviously you will be still applying for specialty, but it's thinking, is your application strong enough? Bearing in mind that you've taken 2 years out and you haven't done any clinical work whatsoever. That's that's not passing any negative aspersions on you, but it's actually thinking about, is your, you know, if you're going for a competitive specialty, do you need to sort of think, actually, maybe I just need to do a staff grade or a fellowship post first, just to get myself up to speed, do some locum shifts before, I go for specialty. So it's really thinking about what you're doing with those 2 years. Are you doing a mix of bit of clinical and then you're going to travel, or if it's pure travel, you might need to do some extra clinical stuff before you can kind of come into training. I think that the other point I wanted to make there, in terms of your F3 competencies, sorry, F2, F foundation competencies, they last up to 3 years. So, you know, if you go any more than 3 years, then you're losing your foundation competencies. But within that 3 years, then you're still up to ST1 level, effectively, if that makes sense. So Alison said, do we lose the NHS email address then? Yeah, it's a difficult one, Alison. If I'm honest, I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to answer that. That's going to be I can find that out for you. That's one I'm going to take away, because I'm just wondering, is it the trust, or is it yeah, because you'd have an NHS, you wouldn't have an HEE email. So I guess it would be through the trust, but I'm not sure whether, as I say, HEE have anything to do with that. But it's one I can take away and look out for you. Any other questions? If possible, and I'd say, I know we've got a little bit over, but hopefully it's been useful. I'd really value if you wouldn't mind either as taking this away. I don't know whether you can pop the link for the evaluation in the chat, Emma, if you've got it handy. We really value, as I say, your feedback and any feedback that you can have, because we run these every year. If there's something that wasn't there for you, or it didn't make sense, or you think that we can do this better, that would be really great. So, you know, if you can take a couple of minutes now to complete that. If not, we will be sending the link again tomorrow with the slides. But yeah, if you can do that, we'd really value that. And I wish you all the best of luck. And as I say, if you do want say to ask any other questions, or you want to book in for a one-to-one, then please do. But good luck and enjoy your FRE.
Good luck.
I'm just going to stop the recording now.